The morning sun beat down hard on the cracked earth of Clara's ranch. She stood on her porch, watching dust swirl across what used to be good grazing land. Her husband had been dead for 2 years now. The drought had been killing her cattle one by one. She gripped the auction notice in her hand. The paper crinkled as her fingers tightened. Tomorrow, they would try to take everything she had left. But why would a stranger, someone she had never truly spoken to, risk everything to stand beside her when no one else would? Clara remembered when this land had been green. When her husband Tom was alive, they had built this ranch together. They had planted every fence post with their own hands. They had dug the well that now barely gave water. Tom had promised her they would grow old here together. But fever took him in the winter 2 years back. Since then, Clara had fought alone to keep what they had built. Mr. Sterling owned most of the valley now. He was a big man who wore fancy suits from back east. He had come to see Clara 3 months ago. He had stood right there on her porch, looking at her dying cattle with a smile. "This is Clara," he had said, tipping his expensive hat. "This land is too much for a woman alone. You cannot pay what you owe to the bank. I am offering you a way out. Take my money and leave. Start fresh somewhere else." Clara had looked him straight in the eye.
"This is my home, Mr. Sterling. My husband is buried on this land. I will not leave."
Sterling's smile had turned cold. "Then you are a fool. The bank will auction your ranch. I will buy it for half what I offer you today. You will leave with nothing."
"I will find a way to pay."
"No one in town will help you," Sterling had replied. "They all know better than to cross me. You have no friends here, widow." He had been right about that part. When Clara went to town for supplies, people looked away. The women whispered behind their hands. The men stepped aside when she walked past. Some feared Sterling. Others thought a woman alone trying to run a ranch was improper. Either way, she was alone. But Sterling had been wrong about one thing. Someone had been watching. His name was Takoda, though Clara did not know this yet. He was Apache, one of the few who still lived near the valley after the wars had ended. He kept to himself, moving through the hills like a shadow. Most folks in town feared him or hated him, but Takoda had learned to live with their hate. He hunted, he trapped, he survived. Clara had first seen him 6 months ago. She had been riding back from town when she found him by the creek. His horse had stepped wrong and thrown him. His leg was hurt bad. Most people would have ridden past, some might have done worse. But Clara had stopped. She had climbed down from her wagon without thinking twice.
"Are you hurt?"
Takoda had watched her with dark eyes, saying nothing. He had expected her to leave or to call for help to drive him off. Instead, she had torn strips from her own petticoat to wrap his leg. She had helped him drink water from her canteen. She had stayed with him until he could stand.
"Can you ride?"
He had nodded once.
"There is a line shack about a mile north. No one uses it anymore. You can rest there until you heal."
She had left him food from her wagon. Dried meat, some bread, a jar of preserves she had been saving. Then she had gone on her way without asking for thanks or even his name. Takoda had watched her wagon disappear down the trail. He had lived among his people and among the whites long enough to know kindness was rare. Real kindness, the kind that asked for nothing back, was rarer still. He had hobbled to the line shack and found everything just as she had said. Over the next days, as his leg healed, he had watched her from the hills. He had seen her working alone, fighting to save cattle that were already half dead. He had seen her mending fences with bloody hands. He had seen Sterling's men watching her ranch, waiting. 3 weeks before the auction, things had gotten worse. Sterling had posted notices all over town, big yellow papers that said Clara's ranch would be sold to pay her debts. He had made sure everyone knew. It was not enough to take her land. He wanted to shame her, too. Clara had torn down every notice she could find, but new ones appeared the next day. People started talking more openly. At the general store, she heard 2 women discussing her situation.
"Pride goes before a fall. She should have taken Mr. Sterling's offer. A woman cannot run a ranch alone. It is not natural."
Clara had left without buying what she needed. Her money was almost gone anyway. Sterling had visited again the week before the auction. This time he had brought 3 of his men. They had sat on their horses, blocking her gate. "Last chance, widow," Sterling had called out. "Take what I offer, or leave with nothing."
"Get off my land."
Sterling had laughed. "Your land? In a week, It will be mine. Everyone in town knows it. You are finished." They had ridden off, leaving deep tracks in her dying garden. That night Clara had sat at their kitchen table with her head in her hands. She had $17 left. The bank wanted $300. She had sold everything she could, her mother's jewelry, Tom's good saddle, even the milk cow. It was not enough. It would never be enough. She had decided then that she would go to the auction. Not to fight, because she had no fight left. She would go to watch her life get sold to the highest bidder. She would stand there with her head high and watch Sterling take everything. Then she would leave with nothing but the clothes on her back. Maybe she would walk into the desert and never come back. The morning of the auction came cold and bright. Clara put on her best dress, the black one she had worn to Tom's funeral. She brushed her hair and pinned it up properly. If this was the end, she would meet it with dignity. The auction was set for noon at the courthouse steps. By the time Clara arrived, most of the town had gathered. Sterling stood at the front with his banker friends. He was wearing a new suit and smoking a fat cigar. When he saw Clara, he touched the brim of his hat and smiled. The auctioneer was a small man with a loud voice. He climbed the steps and called for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here for the public auction of the Morrison Ranch. 300 acres of good land with water rights to Bear Creek. The bidding will start at $100. 100, Sterling called out immediately. 150, said another man, one of Sterling's associates. They were playing a game, Clara knew, driving the price up just enough to look legitimate, but not enough to matter. Sterling would win. He always won. 200, Sterling said, looking right at Clara. She stood at the back of the crowd, her hands folded in front of her. She kept her face blank, but inside, her heart was breaking. Every bid was another nail in the coffin of her dreams. $200 going once, the auctioneer called. That was when the crowd started to murmur. People were turning, looking behind them. Clara turned too. Takoda walked through the crowd like it was tall grass. People stepped back without thinking. He wore simple clothes, leather and cloth worn smooth from use. His hair was long and black, held back with a strip of rawhide. His face showed nothing, but his dark eyes were fixed on something ahead. He walked straight to Clara and stopped beside her. He did not speak. He did not look at her. He simply stood there, his presence as solid as stone. The crowd had gone silent. Everyone was staring. Sterling's face had turned red. What is the meaning of this? Takoda said nothing. The auctioneer cleared his throat. The bidding stands at $200. 250, Sterling said, his voice sharp. Takoda shifted slightly. It was a small movement, just a change in how he stood, but somehow it filled the space around him. Several people near him stepped back. 250, going once, the auctioneer said. His voice was less certain now. One of Sterling's associates started to raise his hand to bid, then stopped. He looked at Takoda, then at Sterling, then shook his head slightly. 250 going twice, Sterling looked around at his men, at the crowd, at the silent Apache standing beside the widow. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. 300, Sterling spat out. $300, the auctioneer repeated. Do I hear 350? Silence. The auctioneer looked around nervously. 300 going once? Takoda took one step forward. Just one step. Several people in the crowd gasped. Going twice. Sterling's hands were fists at his sides. This is not over, he said, but his voice had lost its power. 300, going 3 times. The auctioneer's hammer came down. Sold to Mr. Sterling for $300. But then the strangest thing happened. Sterling stood there, his face red and twisted, and said, I withdraw my bid. The crowd erupted in whispers. The auctioneer looked lost. Mr. Sterling, you cannot. I said I withdraw, Sterling snarled. He looked at Takoda one more time, then turned and pushed through the crowd. His men followed, leaving dust and confusion behind. The auctioneer stood there, not knowing what to do. The auction is closed. No sale. Clara felt her knees go weak. She reached out without thinking and found Takoda's arm. It was like holding onto a tree, solid and unmovable.
Thank you.
Takoda looked at her then. His face was still unreadable. but something in his eyes was warm. "You gave water to a thirsty man," he said. His voice was low and rough from little use. "You gave food to a hungry man. You gave shelter to a hurt man. You asked for nothing." These were the most words anyone in town had ever heard him speak.
It was the right thing to do.
"Yes," Takoda said. And this was the right thing to do. He gently removed her hand from his arm. Then he walked away, back through the crowd that parted for him like water. Clara watched him go, this man who had saved her with his silence and his strength. The crowd started to break up, people talking excitedly about what they had seen. Clara heard someone say that Sterling had withdrawn because he was afraid. Someone else said it was because even Sterling knew you did not cross an Apache warrior. Another said that maybe there was more to the widow than they had thought. Clara did not care what they said. She had her ranch. She had her home. The bank would have to wait for their money, and she would find a way to pay it. She always found a way. That night, Clara left a package at the old line shack. Fresh bread, dried meat. When she came back the next morning, the package was gone. In its place was a single eagle feather. Clara picked it up and held it to the light. She understood. Some debts could never be repaid. Some kindness created bonds that were stronger than words. And sometimes, true strength was not about being loud or forceful. Sometimes, true strength was quiet and steady, like a mountain that had stood for 1,000 years and would stand for 1,000 more. She kept that feather for the rest of her life. And though she never saw Takoda again, she knew he was out there, watching from the hills, making sure she was safe. It was enough. It was more than enough. The ranch survived. Clara survived. And in the years that followed, when people told the story of the auction, they always mentioned the silent Apache who had stood beside her. They said he had not spoken a word during the auction itself. They said his presence alone had been enough to change everything. And they were right. What do you think about this story? Have you ever experienced a moment when someone stood up for you when you needed it most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about courage, kindness, and the strength we find in unexpected places. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most powerful acts are the quietest ones.